Glad y'all are watching us today. In our last video, we talked about our move from Florida, how we did all of our packing up and did everything to get from Florida to South Dakota and all the stops we made in between. In this video, we're going to be discussing our time in South Dakota, in Rapid City and some of the surrounding areas. So this was our second time in South Dakota. We had a really good time the first time we were here in the Black Hills, and we did the touristy stuff. At that point, we did Mount Rushmore and some of the other things, but this time we chose not to do that.
We stayed in a hotel room, which had a kitchen, and the hotel also had laundry facilities for $2 a load, washer and dryer. The hotel offered breakfast each day, which we didn't really partake because they didn't have food options based on our personal preferences and dietary restrictions. We spent the month grocery shopping and cooking for ourselves. We did eat a couple times. And no offense to anyone in South Dakota, but the restaurants there didn't really fit our style of food choices. The reason we were in South Dakota for the month was to change our state of residency. The requirements for state residents fit our situation the best. Also, while we were there, we found out that we could use the main post office in Rapid City. If people watching aren't familiar, there's an option for general delivery through the post office, which is, as our experience has shown, no charge to the user. But essentially, if you don't have a street address where you can pick up mail, you write general delivery where the street address would go with the city, state, and zip, and that main post office will receive the mail for you. You go and you pick it up and no issues. So we started that in South Dakota, and that has worked really well for us while we've been in the States. And during that time, Mushu, it allowed him, after 2 weeks of being in the car, to kind of adjust to some kind of normal home life. We were staying in the same place every day, and he had some of his toys and that kind of stuff, so he seemed to adjust pretty well. And in saying that, it was unusual for us, this change in lifestyle. We were excited, but it was also new. And to establish some kind of routine, we tried to exercise. Kevin went for walks, tried to watch movies and do things like we would when we were home. We went to the grocery store. Yeah, so while we were there, we got to watch Oppenheimer on our hotel room TV. And then we also checked out the local movie theater in Rapid City, which, what did they have, like 3 or 4 theaters? It was kind of...
They didn't have very many theaters there, but it was small, but it was nice, and it was fairly empty
all the time,
each time we went, so that was nice.
The employees there were really friendly.
Funny.
Yeah, they had conversation with us, so we ended up seeing Ministry of
Ungentlemanly Warfare.
And Furiosa, if anyone wants to critique our movie choices, that's fine.
Also, while we were there, we went and visited the Badlands. All of a sudden, it seems like we've started enjoying going to national parks. It was never really a thing for us, but it seems like now it's just kind of happened organically, quite frankly. And we're at a point now where we've been to 18 of the 63 national parks. But in any case, we did visit the Badlands while we were there. It was about an hour drive from Rapid City, where we were staying. It's also about 10 minutes from Wall, South Dakota, which Wall Drug. It's a pretty popular stop as you're traveling across the country, but it's about 10 minutes from there. And so we thoroughly enjoyed it. I'll speak for me. It was one of the 18 national parks we've been to, it's top 2 or 3, I believe, for me. It's not as grandiose as the Grand Canyon or not as imposing as the giant sequoias in Yosemite, but it's just something so serene about that place. It's not very heavily traveled, so it's not amongst the least visited national parks necessarily. It's probably somewhere in the middle, but there just weren't a lot of people there. You don't have to deal with the crowds. And from what I understand, that's always the case. It's never like it is at the Grand Canyon or Yosemite or Yellowstone. So we just really, really had a good time there. Although Felicia did unfortunately get stung by a bee while we were right when we got there, actually. I think it was at the welcome sign. Yeah. She got stung by a bee on your hand, if I remember.
Yeah, we got out to take a picture, and I'm pretty sure the ring on my finger must have attracted. I didn't realize that there were bees all around. Thankfully, not allergic. But yeah, that was a bummer because that hurt pretty bad.
Yeah.
That started off our visit.
Other than the bee sting, we had a really good time while we were there. And I will add that it takes about an hour to drive around the park in its entirety if you don't make any stops, which of course I would assume you would make stops. We certainly did. There are also hiking trails, as there are at pretty much all of the national parks. So it takes time to do that. I would allot yourself at least a couple of hours, I would say. I believe we were there maybe, I don't even think it was quite 3 hours.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 to 2.5 hours or so. In addition, that same week that we did Badlands National Park, we also visited downtown Rapid City. Since this wasn't our first visit there, Felicia had a favorite store when we were here the first time, a place called Prairie Edge. We went there, and we also visited a bookstore, which if you saw our last video, we talked a lot about how much we enjoy going to bookstores pretty much anywhere we are. So we did that. We also checked out the presidents again.
Right. So Rapid City is known as a city of presidents, which before our first visit, we had no idea that that was a thing. But we're not, I wouldn't say we're history buffs, nor are we into U.S. presidential history, but I found it kind of neat. They have 42 life-size statues of most of the U.S. presidents. The map shows you kind of how they're arranged. There's one on each corner, and you can pick up the map downtown and walk it. I wouldn't go to Rapid City to do that activity. However, if you're there and it's interesting, like you can pose. We posed with the Obama statue. Yeah. We took some pictures last time, so that's just a fun, unique activity.
In keeping with the theme of national parks, we also drove up to Theodore Roosevelt National Park in North Dakota. It was about a 3.5 to 4 hour drive to get to the south unit, because the park is set up in 3 units. They have the south unit, the north unit, then they have something called the Elkhorn Ranch unit as well. Getting from the south unit to the north unit takes a little over an hour, and the Elkhorn unit is in between and west of both. That's the one we didn't do. We drove past the south unit and just went on up to the north unit and made our way back down. Kind of odd setup in regards to how national parks are set up. Again, we've only been to 18 of the 63. I don't know if there are any others, but of the 18 we visited, that's the only one that's set up that way, where they have 3 different units that are so far apart from each other in that way. It was an up and back trip for us that day, so we just hit the north unit, south unit, and then drove back to Rapid City. But if I'm doing a comparison, I wouldn't say that I enjoyed it as much as Badlands, but it was still enjoyable. Again, in that one, actually, Theodore Roosevelt National Park is amongst the least visited national parks in the country. So for as few people as there were at Badlands, I mean, Teddy Roosevelt or Theodore Roosevelt National Park was practically deserted. I think in the north unit, we may have seen one other vehicle the whole time we were there. In the south unit, maybe there were a few vehicles, but it was practically deserted.
And the south unit is the one people go to more because
that's
it's
the one
closer to the main highway.
Yeah.
So by going to the north, which is, I guess, a little more remote since it's, like Kevin said, an hour and a half north. I think we both preferred the north unit.
We did,
too,
yeah.
Which, if you're just comparing the 2 units, the scenery, and the wildlife, and the buffalo everywhere.
Yeah, so again, we had a really good time. Enjoyed that. He's a big boy.
chubby.
He's like, yeah, I ain't worried about no bird.
Bird can't pick me up.
Right? Yeah, all the big ones are out.
Go ahead, lift this.
After visiting Theodore Roosevelt National Park, we took a little bit of a break from visiting national parks, and we did check out a city in South Dakota, about 45 minutes from Rapid City, called Spearfish. And there's a place there called Spearfish Canyon. They have a scenic byway that you drive. It's about 19 miles, and along the route, you pass these towering limestone cliffs. There are multiple waterfalls, which we both are fans of waterfalls. They have 3 of them, one called Bridal Veil Falls, which is the easiest one to get to because you can access that. You just pull off on the side of the road and kind of walk right up to see that one. The other 2 a little bit more, I guess, tricky to get to. You have to walk a little bit to see them, but Rough Lock Falls and Spearfish Falls are the other 2, but all 3 of them are impressive and beautiful.
Oh my God, I want to cry. It's so pretty. I can't even get over it.
Wow. It's just the whole scenic byway is just gorgeous. They also have a place, we didn't walk it though, called Devil's Bathtub, and there's a famous swimming hole that you can slide down rocks on to get into. We didn't do all that while we were there.
And even if we had wanted to go to the Devil's Bathtub, I think when we left Spearfish Falls, we were heading to the next set of falls. Yeah. And the GPS wasn't getting a good signal, and we weren't sure which way to go. Literally, we had a 50-50 chance. We were at left or right only. I chose right.
The fork in the road.
Right. Which ended up taking us on a journey that neither of us had would ever want. Yeah. We lost our phone signal, so obviously we didn't have GPS. We had the map as far as an atlas in the car, but it wasn't street view enough for us to know which way we were going. We kept going thinking that we would hit a highway, an on-ramp, something. And then we ended up in Wyoming, and we were in some extremely remote areas.
Yes, sure.
And then we were about a quarter tank of gas left in the car.
Yeah, it was harrowing experience, to say the least.
Neither one of us were at all comfortable with the situation. No. And there weren't really houses, so there weren't convenience stores.
Yeah, we were all the way up in the Black Hills. So,
nothing.
Yeah.
So it took us an hour and a half out of our way, and we found a gas station, and then we were able to breathe a little bit. Once we realized where we were and knew that we had such a far drive to get back to Rapid City, we realized that we'd be passing through Keystone, South Dakota, which is the town where Mount Rushmore is located, and a lot of the people who go to visit stay in that town. Like we said at the beginning of the video, we had already been to Mount Rushmore, so we didn't go back. However, we did decide to drive through Keystone and check it out, which it's pretty small. There's a few stores, there are people walking around, but I think its main purpose is to house tourists.
It's a decent little area. No offense again to anyone who lives there and loves it, but
all 240 residents of Keystone or so.
But also on the way back from Keystone, we had to pass which we didn't realize either, the Crazy Horse Memorial, which we had seen when we were previously in South Dakota as well, and we both just absolutely fell in love with it the first time.
Highly recommend a visit.
Yeah. We actually went into the park, the memorial park itself, the first time, so we didn't do that this time, but we at least got to drive past it and see it again. Crazy Horse, for those who may not know, is a very famous Lakota warrior from yonder days. But the Crazy Horse Memorial is the world's largest carving into a mountain. It's not completed yet. They've been working on it for a while, but it's already impressive, and it dwarfs Mount Rushmore. It's just beautiful. What it represents, it's great. It's all about kind of honoring all Native American people in North America. And we were very happy to get a chance to drive past it and see it again. You can see see Crazy Horse's face, and they're working on the horse, because when it's done, it'll be him on a horse and pointing toward the tribal lands. We're gonna have to go back once it's actually completed, because it's already impressive. If you are in the area, we would highly recommend you go and visit the Crazy Horse Memorial.
And there is a fee for admission, but it's essentially a donation to help continue the carving, because it's an active thing. And they have a visitor center where they have a lot of information. You can stand, and they have an observation platform that looks out over the field, and you can see a really good view. I mean, you could see it from the road, but from the visitor center, you get that up front.
So on the same day that we ended up in Wyoming, we also had dinner in Deadwood, South Dakota, with some friends. When we were in South Dakota the last time, we also had an opportunity to kind of drive through Deadwood, but it was so crowded. It was the Sturgis bike rally, just ridiculously crowded. So we decided to not. This time we had an opportunity to get there a little early before meeting our friends for dinner and walk through the town of Deadwood. It's an old gold rush mining town. It's probably most popular for the fact that Wild Bill Hickok, who was one of the more famous cowboys, where he was supposedly killed, a place called Saloon 10, which is a functioning bar there, and also Calamity Jane. She was another one who was popular, and in fact, she was friends with Wild Bill. They're both buried there. We got a chance to kind of walk around the town. They had some reenactments. So that was interesting to see. Very touristy, but still kind of a cool, eclectic type of area.
Yeah, and we didn't know we were going to happen upon the shootout in the middle of the street. We just happened to get there at a good time.
Of course, unfortunately, all of the gunshots scared the dogs. We heard dogs barking and stuff like that.
So dinner with friends in Deadwood. It was a decent restaurant. We had a good time. Yeah. In addition to the restaurant in Deadwood, we did visit a few other restaurants during our time in Rapid City. Powder House Restaurant, we really liked. We had visited it our first time there, and I was very into it.
Yes.
Bought a mug. We liked the artwork. We had really good service, so we intentionally sought it out for another breakfast. It was still good, but we're different now with how we eat, so getting stuff from the menu was a little more challenging, but we had a great server, so that's a good place if you go out for breakfast.
Yeah, highly recommend. At a place called Bokujo, which is a ramen place owned by Justin Warner. He's on Food Network, and we love Food Network shows, and so when we have an opportunity to go someplace and they have a restaurant that's owned by, maybe someone that we know from Food Network, we will generally try and go. And, no offense, but we weren't terribly impressed with the restaurant. It was okay. It wasn't the best ramen, but, hey, it was an experience. Also, we went to a place called Dakota Steakhouse. That was actually pretty good. We had a really good service. We enjoyed our entrees there as well.
They had sage ice cream, which sounded great, and it was awesome. Kevin had a steak. I had ice cream. It was a good...
We were both happy.
It was a good restaurant.
And so that's really kind of our experience for the most part in Rapid City and our time there. So we enjoyed it.
So in our next video, we're going to Grand Tetons and Yellowstone, which we did during our time in Rapid City. We took a few days in the middle, but because of how huge and how many days we spent, we wanted to devote an entire video to just that experience. So thanks so much for watching, and we hope you liked it.
See you next time. One more again.
In Rapid City, May 2020. So we... 2020.